In the security news, we've got a whole bunch of satellite stuff, some legal bits and bobs, and even a town that was built for hacking. And by the way, has Paul ever told you that he uses Arch? Well, have we got a surprise for him? All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly.
Coming to you from our own individual purgatory studios in the semi-high definition compliments of Paul Asadorian. Man, I need to learn how to talk today. This is Paul's Security Weekly, episode 931, being recorded on Wednesday, June 17th, 2026. I am your host today, instead of Paul, Mr. Larry Pesce. I am joined by some illustrious guests, Mr. Lee Neely.
Hey, it's good to be here, although you're cutting into my railroading time, damn it.
Well,
Cry me a river.
We could actually talk about some railroading stuff for you, Lee. There's a story that I forgot to add to the show notes, but we can talk about some railroading stuff. We got one for you. Speaking of railroading, I'm also being joined by Mr. David Johnson.
Hello.
I don't know what that segue was all about, but
I don't either. I'm like, this is going to be good. I have not, nor have I ever been a train. Conducting things is something
used
that I
to wear
sometimes
bib
do.
overalls.
I mean, that's great for welding. It prevents the rest of your clothes from catching on fire. Anyway,
except just the overalls. That's all. Right?
Yeah. Yep. That saves time. I'm all about efficiency. Good to see everybody.
Awesome. And last but not least, Mr. Jeff Mann.
Hey, happy to be here. Let's do this thing.
Excellent. Well, real quick before we get started, I know we've got some announcements. Specifically, if you're in the SOC, you already know the pain. Too many alerts, not enough context, and attackers slipping through the cracks, of course. Now add AI-driven attacks and increasingly complex environments, and At the AI for Next Gen SOC Virtual Cybersecurity Summit on June 24th, learn how to actually apply AI for detection engineering, threat hunting, and reducing false positives without breaking your workflows. Security Weekly listeners can register for free at securityweekly.com/NextGenSOC using promo code CSS26-SW. That's Charlie Sierra 26 Sierra Whiskey Sierra Whiskey. All right. With that, Dave, I know you had something that you wanted to talk to. You said, in big news, this is what I got. So big news announcement. What do you got?
Yeah. So it's big in that it's almost over, in that I've been planning for the past year to go to tour camp, traveling from the East Coast to the West Coast and going camping was more logistics than I had originally expected. All the way down to what I'm going to, what I can take in a carry-on versus what I have to check in luggage. There's a bunch of different constraints. Thanks to Claude, I was able to sort some of that out, and I actually did avoid some challenges, shall we say, things I didn't think of.
Define what are those challenges like?
So when I go camping, I typically take a Leatherman, some sort of pocket knife, multi-tool type thing. Yeah. It's reflexive. And so I looked up the rules for TSA and said, cool, all I have to do is check it in the luggage, put it in something so nobody gets cut if they search my luggage, and be generally considerate of anybody searching the bag. Great. And then I said, you know what? I just want to double check anything I hadn't thought of. And sure enough, apparently in the state of Washington, they passed a rule that said you cannot take knives to transit centers, in which the ferry that goes over to Orcas Island, which is part of the transit system, technically would fall into that. So in order not to run afoul, that's staying at home, and instead I'm just bringing a regular multi-tool / screwdriver setup without anything sharp. But in short, for the listeners at home who haven't been to tour camp, or anybody for that matter, this is every 2-year conference. It is basically a mixture of DEF CON and Burning Man on an island in the Seattle Sound. And
what could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go right? Here's what you can expect. You can expect tacos to be delivered by drone. You can expect a PBX line to be brought over, an RJ11 line to be brought over to your tent. If you submit it, you have to submit a work ticket with your GPS location, but it's not terrible. There's entire villages with themes, one of which is bureaucracy, which I had a lot of fun at last time I went. Basically, their entire governmental system runs on beer. And so there's all kinds of stuff to do. Good talks, lots of hands-on electronics, and then the challenge of bringing entire computer systems out into the wild. It's going to be a great time. If anybody else is there, hit me up. We'll hang out and do some crazy electronics with phones.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
And it sounds disturbing all at the same time. But that's just me being a grumpy old man.
It did give me the excuse to purchase a lot of new gear. One of which, I don't know if anybody remembers these, basically these silver dollar sized phones. They were like the world's smallest phones back in the 90s. And they have a headset. And so when I was thinking about the whole, I need to bring a phone to tour camp. Well, I'm going to bring a really, really small one that is much more portable than bringing a princess phone or something massive handset wise. The fact that they even though they haven't made them in decades, the fact that they still have them for sale on eBay is just it's phone freaking never dies. It's like disco. That's all I'm saying.
And I can imagine that you didn't pay a whole hell of a lot for said phone on eBay.
It was like $10. I had to get new ear. The most expensive part was I had to get new ear tips, which are the standard black foamy ones.
Yep. Yep. That's hilarious. So you're not carrying a payphone with you,
that's probably more work than it's worth. Much as I would like to. Maybe I can drone it in.
There you go. There you go. Phone it in.
I'm thinking some of those old phones, you're going to have a power supply because I bet there's not power over that network, over that drop.
I hadn't thought about that, but I do have a solar panel. I've got a couple of universal power transformers that I brought with me.
Of course you do.
I should be able to figure it out.
I have no doubt.
I suspect people will be there to help.
That'd be a fun problem to have.
Apparently, Jack Resider is keynoting.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
So tell Jack we said hello. And Jay Beal is supposed to be there, Larry.
Interesting.
Oh, yes. Major hugs from us for him.
Yes. Yep. Well, Orcas Island is right in his backyard, so
sort of is.
Yep.
Yeah. Last time I ran into Jay was with you, Jeff, over at Black Hat.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Those are the only two names I'm recognizing so far. I'm looking at all the speakers.
Nice.
I'm sure I know a lot of these people. Just I don't know their real names.
Dean Pierce is a massive powerhouse of the Pacific Northwest cybersecurity community. He's a red teamer. He was one of the founders of the Hack Boat conference as well in Portland. Really good dude, great person to know. Shout out, Dean, if you're listening.
And if you're not, shame on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the good news is, if you cannot make it to tour camp this year, you have 2 whole years to prepare. And I would highly recommend you go.
Yes, agreed.
You're probably sick of the word agent, but here's the problem. Your dev team is handing every new agent in your cloud way more permissions than it needs. And when one goes rogue, you've got 4 minutes before your data's gone. You need a default deny button that doesn't break every workload. That's Sunry's Cloud Permission Firewall. Native IAM controls, not newfangled AI nonsense. Default deny on every agent and human identity automatically. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Sunry. That's SONRAI.
All right. Hey, well, that was a rather long announcement, but it was a fun one. But speaking of other announcements, it's already public, but it hasn't been mentioned on the show. Mr. Jeff, you had some news for us.
I do have some news. Some of you might recognize the tagline on my custom-made T-shirt from my new employer, Secure Ideas. I started with them technically Monday a week ago. My first week on the job was going to RVA Sec, and I got to announce officially at RVA Sec at the end of my talk, oh, by the way, I'm working for Secure Ideas. The vision is Kevin Johnson, now Tackett, the founder and I guess owner of Secure Ideas. He approached me back in January and said, I'm thinking about starting a PCI practice to complement everything else that they do, to kind of be a full service shop. And I'm willing to do it if you'll run the practice. And I said, so you want to talk about that? First, I should try to talk you out of doing PCI in the first place. And that didn't work. So, he and I have known each other for a lot of years. We'd usually run into each other at hotels or conferences and, chatted, been chatting for years. And he knows me well enough to know that I know a little bit about PCI. So he wants to, and technically the job I used to have, we were partnered with Secure Ideas. They would throw us the PCI assessment work if they had a client that needed that additional service. When my former company was acquired by a no-name company who I refused to give airtime to, they canceled all the partnerships. And I think that was one of the reasons why Kevin decided, okay, maybe we should just bite the bullet and go ahead and start a practice. So,
why would they cancel all the partnerships? It just seems bizarre.
Because, well, that's the tip of the iceberg, Larry. Company who has no name that I will mention. I finished an assessment on March 31st. We became part of the company on March 1st, and because of contracting screw ups and the job being on old company paper but delivered on new company paper, new company has no idea what they're doing. My client has been emailing once a week until 2 weeks ago when I resigned. Is there any way we can actually pay our bill? So apparently the new company had no way of doing invoicing. And there's not enough whiskey in my office right now to go down that route. The good news is that's all behind me.
Yes.
I do. I mean, I was working with a lot of people that I've worked with for many years. There's really a lot of sharp people there. One by one were leaving. So I feel a little bit bad for the people that I left behind, but it wasn't our fault. It was the company that decided to go and get acquired by this big company that doesn't care about anybody. And I'm not saying their name, so I F them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No need to burn those bridges because the industry is really small. So speaking of PCI, Jeff, we're in the process of doing an update, or sort of yearly update to the SANS Wireless Core 6617, and I caught something at the end of our WPA 2 pre-shared key section that it was like in the roll-up, like the summary slide. And the summary slide apparently has needed some attention for a little bit. The summary slide, and I know where we were referring to it from the history, that can remember them, back in like PCI 2 era, that WEP was a no-go, no WEP networks available,
Right.
and to be used because they're the weak. And the next successor to that was arguably WPA2 pre-shared key, as opposed to the whole enterprise installation, because it was a simple upgrade path. And the summary slide we've got is WPA pre-shared key is okay for compliance. And it doesn't have a lot of context around it, but I know that context was arguably referring to somewhere around PCI 2, stating that WPA2 pre-shared key was okay for compliance. It's like, that's still the case?
Yeah, that's very dated information.
Exactly.
Because version 2 was 2010 to 2013.
Okay.
So we're talking over a decade. I mean, most of the clients that I've had over the years, especially since the migration to the cloud, wireless is less and less of an issue. There are historically there's requirements in PCI to keep wireless networks separate from your cardholder data environment altogether.
Yep.
Or if they are connected,
mm-hmm.
And I've had clients where everything they do is over the wireless. So
yeah, but like exactly, you consider the payment terminals that go to the table, and those types of things. Like those are wireless. Those are potentially Wi-Fi.
Yep, these days they are.
Yeah. So
what's
the
those
advice?
days? I would honestly have to check on that specific question because I haven't evaluated Wi-Fi versions in quite a while because most of my clients over the last several years they isolated. And so it's we don't have to dig into the details. I can certainly research it and get back to you, maybe even by the end of the show.
Cool.
Except for I have nothing on my new laptop, so I have to plug in one of my external drives to get to my plethora of data.
Yes.
Can't we just convert all those terminals to phone line instead and call it a day?
Yeah, we can learn a thing from TourCamp, right?
Yeah.
We could. You'd still be on the hook for PCI. Just a different version of the self-assessment questionnaire.
Nice.
Budding.
Yeah, Jeff, I can also remember we used to bang the drum on the PCI side when no default passwords were not acceptable, and arguably they're still not acceptable. And part of the way WPA2 pre-shared key works is that one of the inputs into your key generation, aka a password, is the SSID, the friendly name of the network. And our argument was that if you didn't change your default SSID, you were technically in violation of PCI because that was being used as a password.
Yeah, it's kind of along the lines where during COVID, I had a lot of time to think about stuff, and I was doing a lot of virtual interviews and stuff, and watching people multi-factor into systems for us to evaluate. And I'm watching them open up their password manager and copying and pasting the password out. I'm sitting there thinking, that's not something that they know. That's something that they have. And then they're going off and getting the second something that they have. I'm like, yeah, technically you're not doing two-factor authentication according to the rules. So there have always been it's been very common through the years in the standard for there to be little nitpicky things that, it technically says this. And sometimes it's intentional. I think most of the times it's not. Like many organizations, they've got different authors for the different sections of the standard. I mean, one of the main reasons why we have PCI version 4.0.1 instead of just 4.0 is because apparently two groups or two different people wrote different sections, and they didn't actually agree with one another.
So amazing how that works.
They had to tweak it a little bit.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the data security standard itself. It was the data security standard versus one or more of the self-assessment questionnaires. Not to bore you guys with details, but
too late. Sorry, Jeff. Somebody's got to bust your stones.
Sorry, I fell asleep. What was that all about?
PCI.
Oh, okay. I'll take a nap. No, seriously. There's a lot of subtleties in that bloody standard, but it actually is one of the better ones. Well, it's kept up with the times.
It's attempted to, and I would still argue, and I'm open to being, change my mind, but I think PCI data security standard, when you look at it at the 12 requirements and the 6 overarching goals, they still pretty much stand regardless of what technology we're talking about. But does AI, we could have a whole little side discussion on AI maybe as part of this evening if we run out of stories, because I have some philosophical questions about AI that I would love to hear your guys' take on if we have time.
I mean, the philosophy I've always applied to PCI was that it was the evolutionary middle ground between doing nothing and teaching people who know nothing about cybersecurity how to, and incentivizing that. And to me, every time I've seen it evolve, it's basically capitalized on, okay, we're pretty sure everybody should be up to par here. Let's do the next lesson, which is, now you need to think about this. Now that you've figured out the basics, now we're going to up the basics a bit. We're going to incentivize that by putting.
I noticed you didn't use the word fundamental. Now it's basic.
Because it's not fun. It's not fun.
No, it is not.
And you've got to be mental not to do it.
And every time I picture like the mindset behind PCI, I think of Peter the Great, who famously dragged Russia kicking and screaming into the current date of technology. And that, to me, that resonates pretty well. It basically took organizations who were like, we're just going to ignore cybersecurity. We just take credit cards and then go, you know what, you kind of have to do this now. We're gonna move you over here. Right. This is what basic security is, or fundamental, your preference. And we're just going to keep iterating on that. That's just my take.
So now all we have left is organizations that don't really want to do cybersecurity. And if they don't take credit cards, they don't do cybersecurity.
How do we get them on board?
Well, I spent the day, one of my side gigs is I'm on an advisory board for what's more or less an incubator for companies that want to do work in the Intel community. And we were having our annual Defend the Airport event today. So you can use those words and figure out where I'm talking about. But I spent a day listening to mostly government people. In fact, the afternoon keynote was the acting director of CISA. So I'm like, okay, I'll sit and listen to, and he probably has never listened to this show. His name's Nick Anderson, I believe. And I messaged Alan Friedman. It's like, do you know this guy? He goes, oh yeah, I know him. I said, all right, I'll tell him. He said hello. I never did get a chance to talk to him. The guy's, near as I can tell, is in his mid-40s. He's a Marine, but I swear to God, he looks like he's 12 years old. I'm like, why is this guy wearing a suit standing up in front of us? He looks like he should be on a playground. But, he had a pretty good talk. But so much of these discussions that I hear in the government realm and in the cybersecurity realm, and, a lot of the focus was critical infrastructure and OT. And people are talking about needing to do things like, well, we need to have an inventory of what we have. I'm like, yeah, that's only been a PCI requirement since version 2, Larry, 2010. And it goes on from there. I mean, so many things that are, I hear, and some of it was just, side conversations that I was overhearing walking around, and people are talking about the need for, well, we're going to have to do regulation, but the trick is how do you enforce it? Like, yeah, we talked about that 40 years ago, and then PCI came along, and guess what? It had an enforcement incentive that worked pretty well.
You can either do this or you could not make money. You take your pick, right? Yeah, that's a pretty good incentive.
Well, final thought on that, just to tie it into the OT, is a lot of the critical infrastructure that they talk about. In today it was the airport, and I'm like, I've had airports as PCI clients. They don't talk about that stuff. Water utilities, electric companies, all that kind of stuff. They all take credit cards for payment. So somewhere in those organizations, there's somebody that either knows the standard or knows how to get around the standard, because that still happens. But I'm always like, PCI data security standards is a pretty good framework to apply anywhere for any objective, and it's inside your organization somewhere. Why do we need to come up with yet another NIST something or other, or a CIS custom set of controls, or something else? There's something out there that's kind of tried and true and has worked pretty well over the years. Just a thought.
PCI, all the things. I mean,
I like that. That's a t-shirt.
That's the next t-shirt. I was just thinking, you made me think of this. It would make an excellent, if this hasn't been done already, excellent graduate student project going through the secondary fallout of security maturity as a result of PCI.
Hmm.
So like what things, to your point, like utility organizations who historically have not had the strongest PCI security posture.
Right.
Before and after adopting PCI, are they significantly stronger? Those kinds of scenarios. I would love to study. The reason why I suggest a graduate student does this is because they have time. I don't. So I would love it if they did that for me, unless it has already been done. So if anybody knows of that kind of study, I would love to read it.
And I can predict what the answer will be because, organizations like utilities that are, horribly underfunded and under budget, and that's why you hear why they don't do cybersecurity all the time. They largely can't afford to do what they need to do for PCI, so they find ways to outsource it and bring in third parties and, put it all on them. Not necessarily the liability, but the responsibility for meeting a lot of the requirements. So I would believe that a lot of them aren't any really better off than they were before doing PCI if they've gone the route of relying on third parties, which most organizations do these days. Still might be a fun idea. I was going to also say, I mean, what are the secondary? I forget how you said it. The secondary effects.
Yeah.
I mean, the last. I haven't read this year's DBER report, but last year and the year before was talking about, companies where they used to get their credit cards stolen. People are breaking in there and they're not stealing the credit cards anymore. They're stealing credentials.
Yeah.
So that that's one of the secondary effects.
So like. The way I'm picturing this, like a true secondary effect would be, hey, we now have to do PCI. So instead of just isolating and only doing strong security on a subset of the environment, doing definitely carving that out. But hey, while we're here, why don't we provide good security across the entire environment and leverage the whole exercise as just an initiative and a good thing to do. While we're here, it's only, X number of % more to cover the whole environment. And while we're re-architecting this, I think that's what I'm thinking about.
And what you're describing is referred to in the PCI vernacular as segmentation or isolation to create what's called the cardholder data environment, or CDE. That in and of itself is not and never has been a requirement. It was assumed when PCI first came out that the organization was a flat network, and it was designed to be a measurement of your overall security program as it pertained to protecting credit card data. And I, to this day, don't recommend to my clients that they lean on segmentation to isolate a CDE, and they've got so many interconnected things anyway. It's hard to argue that they actually truly have a segmented environment. Because I tell them exactly what you're saying. Do all these things everywhere. And I say to my clients, there isn't a lot in here that you shouldn't be doing everywhere anyway. So why don't we talk about what are you struggling with? And there's usually, the usual suspects, like inventory identification, patching, or even just getting the vulnerability scanners to reach everything, that type of thing. But why not do all those things? Because that's where I come in as a security professional and not a PCI professional. I'm like, there's not much here you shouldn't be doing. So talk me into why I shouldn't make you do
it. This may be too spicy of a question, but why is doing inventory management so hard? Why doesn't everybody have this done and dusted and easy? It doesn't seem like that hard a task. Like pen testers do this all the time, fairly automatedly. Why is this something that is so commonly overlooked in environments? From what I've seen, I talk to a lot of people who are like, I don't really know what's in my environment. And they're not just talking about the cloud.
Well, who are the usual worst offenders of putting stuff on the network that isn't necessarily authorized?
Yeah. The IT department.
IT department. Security. They're the worst. So it's a do as I say, not as I do scenario more than anything.
Yeah. So, and also a lot of, there are folks that come to company and say, yeah, I can, because that just happens. I'll give you a tool to discover everything on your network. It'll all be cool. It's only $1 million a year license.
Why? Threat actors do it for free. That's all I'm saying.
That I am not arguing that point. You are absolutely right. An adversary will get a full inventory off your network at no charge to you.
Yeah.
But it would actually has some cost. But it's that when the guy says I'll solve all your problems for a crazy amount. I don't know why they ask for so much money to auto discover, except that people need to do it for things like PCI, so they kind of just go there.
Yep.
It's along the lines of, would you like to buy a bridge?
Yeah. It's a $600 hammer sold to the U.S. government.
Yeah,
but Dave, I love your analogy. The adversaries do it for free, right? They do it for free, but if you want the results, you're gonna pay for it. As a segue, kind of like
that's a very interesting twist to ransomware.
Yeah,
like it'd be like almost legal.
Yeah, kind of like our Novo Nordisk story that both Lee and I had in there. Yeah.
Let's do a story. Good transition.
They got hacked, and they had some issues with some data, and they got they had a $25 million. Am I reading this wrong? And they $25 million effectively ransom.
Yeah, I was trying to. They didn't have the ransom yet when I was looking at the story.
Okay, let me look at my story.
The technical term is extortion.
Yes, good point.
Extortion.
Dave.
Yeah,
good
that's
point.
Same. Yeah. Ransom. The effective ransomware anymore is extortion. They encrypt all the things. Really, I don't think works, but that I got your data and I'll sell it back to you.
Yep,
that works.
Yes, yeah. So the headline of mine was "Hacking Group Claims Major Hack of Novo Nordisk, Attempted $25 million Extortion." So yeah, Dave, extortion. That's the word for it there. I did link to the Slashdot article because the main article they linked to was at Reuters, if I recall, and it requires
the register
subscription to Reuters.
Right. So but yeah, Fulcrum Sec, interesting. Yep. They're new, as in October 25 new, so it's not a name we've heard a lot yet. Doesn't make it hurt any less. This was crazy, and as near as I can tell, though, what they've got is information about, this is clinical trial stuff. They have information about the companies rather than the participants, because the participants' information was obfuscated, pseudo-anonymized.
So they're HIPAA compliant.
Yes, but they're not. They don't have the information necessarily to map it back to the individual belly buttons, but they sure know who's in there. And I'm thinking this will be leveraged for business email compromise. I mean, or other, I'd like to you need to update some of your payer information because we've changed things.
Yeah.
And don't forget my invoice is due tomorrow.
This Fulcrum Sec folks seem kind of interesting. Like, they're referred to in this article that I'm reading as a cyber extortion group. Yet Fulcrum Sec representative also said the group would prefer not to sell the data, as open sourcing is more effective deterrent for future companies to avoid paying. The group said it would also withhold data related to operational technology and software used to interact with sensors and machinery at Novo Nordisk production facilities as part of its harm reduction strategy. Like, these are the most ethical cyber extortion people I've ever heard of.
They don't know whether to wear their hat white side out or black side out.
Right. Like, interesting. It'll be interesting to hear, sort of how they got in and some more of this type of stuff as things go on. But, they got 1.3 terabytes of data, including source code, drug research, clinical trial records, employee and physician information, production system details, and internal AI model data. That should be some interesting AI model data, especially if they're using that in drug research.
Yeah, because they're working, Norman, they're a GLP-1 producer, right?
Yep.
They're part of behind the
Wegovy
pill and stuff.
Yeah, Wegovy.
So having that information could really put Novo in some world of hurt.
Now, are they using it for that? We don't know. We're speculating a little bit here, but I think about that, and when we saw Fable come out and then subsequently disappear, when we saw Fable came out like a week ago, if you start looking at some of the guardrails on that, and I was with a coworker last week when I was teaching for SANS. One of the guardrails on Fable was along the lines of "Thou shalt not create viruses and so forth." The arguable reason for that is that it was perfectly capable of being used to create bioweapons. And the point being was that it was perfectly viable for being used to create bioweapons, and arguably, tell me what I need to go buy at Amazon to go make bioweapons, and could arguably do it.
I mean, so I got to play with it for about a day, and I had read those restrictions, and I said, you know what? I'm still gonna do something cybersecurity related, because it did have restrictions around things that were cybersecurity related. And I ended up starting with a video. I said, I'm making a video game and it's going to teach people things. And I had it build a generic scaffolding. And then I inserted the cybersecurity facet to it. And it didn't blink. It just kept on working. And so I at least got a really functional, fun video game out of it that I'm probably going to release in a few weeks. But it didn't seem to give me as much pushback as I had thought it would.
So you remind me, have you guys ever heard of the story from a long time ago called A Logic Named Joe?
No,
I do not.
I'll give you a hint. It was published recently in 1946.
Okay.
And it was written before we had computers. It was just, they had the idea of logic devices that were in everybody's home, but they would do a lot of helpful things, answering questions, help people do research, but they had a whole lot of guardrails. And then there was a manufacturing flaw in one, and it didn't have any guardrails. So it would show kids the porn, answer the questions it wasn't supposed to, and answer questions for adults like, how can I print my own money without getting caught? Tell me that doesn't sound parallel to what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, people have said replace logic with computers and the internet. And I say read it in 2026 and replace that with AI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting. But like I said, 1946, published in Astounding Magazine, which a name I hadn't heard for a long time till I went and found that. It's a neat read. It's only, it's not even 20 pages, but it's kind of cool. And if you hold it in today's context, it's like, damn.
The thing I always go to, and this is, and I just looked it up, it's 1964 episode of Twilight Zone called The Brain Center at Whipple's.
Oh, well played.
The brain center at what?
Whipple's.
Okay.
So I'm going to go read the logic story because that sounds really cool. But this is the one I always think about. It's effectively the CEO over automates everything, fires everybody, and then all of a sudden he can't fix anything, and he doesn't know how anything operates because he's become so distanced from how the machinery works. Like good lesson, good thing to look out for. But it sounds like yours is a lot more. There's a lot more content to it.
Yeah, but an interesting piece about that one is it builds on one of the themes from Asimov's Foundation series that creativity, amnesia. People don't know how to fix and invent things anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it's been suppressed.
Any sufficiently advanced technology should be indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, who said that? That is exactly so, yes.
Yeah, Asimov said that.
Yes.
Yep.
I've got his physics book, too. It's a good read.
Yeah.
Nice.
Anyway, this is we're giving our readers some homework. Do some reading.
Yeah, and the irony here is same conversation I was having with some of my students last week. Like, it feels more and more every day that we are entering a Neil Stephenson novel. Mm-hmm. Specifically, I think... Snow Crash and The Diamond Age, like a cross between those two. It feels like we're getting there more and more and more. With stuff like TikTok doing brainwashing and all sorts of interesting data models, being siloed, and artificial intelligence, and the ability for us to build whatever we want, 3D printing, and some of the spyware technologies and all that type of stuff. And I was saying this to my students, and none of them had read that, and I said, but the dystopian future doesn't look as cool as I thought it would be. I thought there'd be a lot more neon and a lot dirtier. So, So, but yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I was reading one of the, I went looking for what was the nature of the Novo Nordisk breach. First of all, and the article I found was talking about very much downplaying. Oh, it was just a little bit of clinical data that was discovered, no big deal. But
that's
then
where they started.
Which is one of the philosophical rants I've been thinking about lately, especially today, listening to all this talk about OT and what do we need to do about protecting OT systems and critical infrastructure. There used to be this thing called the data triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Which for the record, are only in that order because someone made them that way. They don't necessarily have any stacked order for.
Correct. And most of what we have been involved with in our profession and industry for the last 30 years is focused on confidentiality, frankly.
And maybe a little bit of integrity.
A little bit.
Yeah,
but
mostly
not like what we're talking about, all the gloom and doom and bad things that could happen to all of our critical infrastructure. It's not it's not about stealing the data that opens up the water duct. It's about the availability of that command going out there. And I have long thought that we are woefully unprepared for having a conversation about integrity and availability exclusive of the confidentiality aspect of the data security triad. However, I also think if you just applied the basics or the fundamentals, would you not be equally protecting any of those three bad outcomes?
Maybe.
Well,
I think about that.
I mean, that's the question I have that I'm, that I want to answer, but I'm not ready to, like you, Lee, I'm not ready to just immediately jump in.
Right, because I'm thinking about your OT reference, critical systems, where availability is king.
Right.
And the way that they're accessed, maintained, and everything is about keeping them up and running, not necessarily their integrity or the confidentiality of the information, which matter, but they're significantly less. Although we've been teaching our OT people that those things also matter, and they are part of the conversation now. They do understand it. Just don't reduce their availability, or they won't, or we can't be friends.
Yeah, and Lee, I think about some of the data that's there. I think second to that would be the integrity, because if you do not have data that you can trust, you're using that data to make some very serious decisions with those networks. So, yeah, I think availability is primary, integrity is sort of secondary.
I had a very short stint working for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to do security assessments of nuclear power plants. Integrity, for like thermometer, temperature sensors in reactors, integrity of that data is pretty darn important.
Yeah.
Right. Sensor data, very much the integrity matters. Confidentiality, a distant third. I mean, they don't care who knows that the reactor's running at, 912.3 degrees, right? Yep. In fact, that might be a crisis, so maybe a lot of people need to know. But if it's actually running, 100 degrees colder, that's not okay.
Right.
Yep.
And we had anyway. So
these are the types of questions that one needs to ponder when they're out at tour camp on Orca Island.
Orcas Island,
It's going to be an island in the sun. So I was looking at the Russia story. Regarding
Dave,
sorry.
Which one?
The one about jamming satellites. The one about jamming satellites. So it's weird to me that this is like seemingly this hard, that it requires like 8 different units to octangulate, I guess would be the term, a single satellite in order to interfere with it. So I'm thinking about like the weaponization strategy of this. Okay, so let's say you get like 10 of these, and maybe you focus on like a small constellation, and you kind of cut off like a larger quantity of like ring, like create a ring of dead satellites that can't talk to each other, and you could potentially encompass a bunch. But that would take a bunch of these things.
Yeah, you'd need allegedly the technology here, and who knows if they're downplaying it. They say that one of these installations, these trailer installations that cost $1.5 million, could target one satellite in a constellation.
This seems harder than it should be.
It does. It really does.
Well, if I'm reading what's in the article right, each satellite has 8 channels, and they're DOSing these. This is a DOS attack. They're flooding each of those 8 channels with data, so the satellite's effectively offline. The problem is scaling the damn thing, because there's hundreds of these satellites.
Yep. And not to mention,
I'm sure every one of them runs on the same default 8 frequencies. Just gotta throw that out there.
I mean, either way, I loved one of the jokes here that like, they can DOS one satellite, and they can make one satellite in the constellation over a particular area unavailable. So if they want to actually have some lasting effect, they need a whole bunch of them at really expensive costs, and they're actually fairly large.
Yeah,
and that there was a very easy solution to this. Yeah, $1.5 million for the trailer, a $5,000 drone to dispose of it.
Yeah. They're going to say
I didn't catch that part
instead, but
no,
I was
$5,000
thinking
drone.
Moonraker.
Yeah,
Go back and
I
watch
mean,
Moonraker.
I could see somebody like Elon reading this and it's like, I'll just launch a bunch more satellites. It'll be cheaper than trying to defend against this attack.
Yeah, and by the way,
the drone answer.
Yeah, and I'll give everybody more Starlink terminals. Like that's what he did during the beginning of the war. Like internet got cut off, so he just shipped truckloads of Starlink terminals. And
one
gave
would
them away.
hope that somewhere somebody said this is an ineffective attack, not cost effective.
Yeah, it just seems like it doesn't make sense at all. It seems like it's downplayed. Also, I just imagined Elon Musk like intentionally causing early decay of a satellite so it would like smack one of these things.
I mean, it's a little bit more expensive than a $5,000 drone, but that's also a solution.
Be like, you want one? Here you go.
Well, what is their lifestyle? They're not that long lived, are they? I'm trying to remember.
I think so.
They're reasonable, but
So it's not like you get one that was near EOL and crash it.
Yeah, there was for me this week, a lot of my stories were satellite heavy. I've been digging into a bunch of stuff, and there was another one that came up. That the irony is that my 13-year-old came to me on Monday and was like, "Dad, did you know that someone was jamming GPS over Europe?" I'm like, "Yeah, it happens all the time." He said, "But did you know that they found who was doing it?" And I'm like,
Ooh, that's different.
Oh, so there was a video that our good friend Mr. Mike Poor sent me about a PhD candidate student and his advisor that were working on this problem. That they were able to see that there were a bunch of like very short bursts of jamming attacks. And it was they initially theorized that it may have been very similar to one of my other stories using GPS as a number station. And turns out it was actually jamming over every ground station that was covered over a good swath of Eastern Europe for hundreds of miles. And the irony of this whole story is that they finally were able to get access to the raw data to figure out what was going on. And then they set up monitoring specifically looking for those conditions again, and nothing happened. And they waited and they waited and they waited and they waited. And then it happened, and they were able to get some really great data from 2 different geographically distant ground stations. And based on that, they basically took the GPS math that when you get data from GPS satellites, you articulate the time difference to determine how far away, and then put you on that. They articulated the time difference from when they received the jamming attack to be able to pinpoint the height and of the satellite, and they pinpointed a satellite within 200 meters, and it was like 33 miles up on and it's on an elliptical orbit, so it's further out over Europe and then closer on the opposite side of the planet. And they were able to identify a single satellite tied to Russia that was doing the attacks. Like they use GPS in reverse to figure out who was doing it. I thought that was fascinating at the end.
That
Makes sense.
That's pretty damn cool.
Yep. Yeah. So if we're talking GPS for a minute here, I got two stories in there. Arguably, there were two different little tacks. One of them was
one piqued my interest.
Yeah, which one?
The GPS number station.
Yeah. Yep. So the GPS number system. Specifically, there is a quote forgotten 176-bit slot in the most successful navigation signal that turned out to be its quietest and most consequential broadcast. So some folks were looking at some quote random looking data in one of the subframes, specifically subframe 4, page 17, which is quote encrypted material from the Pentagon's over-the-air distribution network, OTAD, which is supposed to deliver cryptographic keys to military personnel around the world. And then looking at that, he started to note that there was a pattern that happened in February 2010 that was broadcast off and on across dozens of satellites for more than a decade.
When you read it out loud like that, it makes me think I probably shouldn't say anything. But I was gonna say I'm familiar with number station.
Yep. For the next 11 of years, this expansive rekeying operation was overlooked in public GPS data. In 2022, it entered a new phase, according to the analysis from Murdoch there. The shift was characterized by a slowing in the message rotation rate, and then in 2023, broadcast carrying a distinctive text, the ASCII TEXT prefix, emerged and then gradually spread across the constellation.
I assume that it's a broadcast. We're not talking about a two-way communication.
Yep, it is definitely a broadcast. Yeah, GPS is strictly down and not back up. Yep. Every receiver in the world decodes subframe 4, page 17. Almost none of them have ever looked at it.
Oh, somebody's got to abuse that. I hope that's inspiring somebody. It does make me wonder if they're hypothesizing that it might be a rekey function.
Yeah,
I
think
that need to go up to the satellites.
Yeah, well, arguably, I think that was one of the intended uses for that was to be able to do over-the-air key distribution. But could it be used for key distribution, right? Yeah, it all depends what those keys are for.
Somebody needs to analyze it and find out that it's really a DoorDash order or something like that.
Well, at least they might know right where to send it. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it could be telemetry data. It could be some sort of audit of the sensors to make sure, recalibration or something like that. There's probably any number of things it could be, but we do like to theorize conspiracy theories stuff.
The irony is that when we were sharing this with some of the 617 instructors, Monte Elkins came up with a question like, U.S. GPS constellation isn't the only GPS constellation out there. There's a couple of others. He said, I wonder if any of the other protocols have the ability to have similar types of function. So
probably since they stole the technology from us in the first place.
Yeah, arguably. So I asked Cat I Farted to do an analysis of the other protocols, and it turns out the one that is most likely to have those capabilities is Baidu. China's constellation.
Yeah, you had me at China. And like I said, of course it would.
Of course it would. Right. So we'll see how many people got my joke too. The Cat I Farted. I know some of you will because you saw it on Signal, but we'll see how many of our listeners get the joke. But yeah.
Speaking of which, did you pre-name the episode, Larry?
I have not.
Okay, so I have one vote for PCI all the things.
Or cat I farted, PCI all the things.
That might work too. Before everybody hangs up tonight, let's have a consensus. And then Paul will come in and change it. No, he pre-changes.
Yeah.
So he's not.
So moving down the stack, I was looking at some of mine that are kind of different. Like I had my number 8 story about a fired IT worker who knocked out their DNS records, their Facebook page, and what else he did? He took out their app. They modified their Apple script, Apple manager account for their Apple corporate Apple stuff. I'm thinking, if they did something like that to my stuff, I'd be like I'd be out for blood.
Yeah.
And he's getting 21 months and a $60,000 fine. He caused him about $100,000 worth of damage. That being so light, I have to wonder: did they forget to disable his access or something?
I'm going to say yes. One, like, how in this day and age do you think does anybody think, disgruntled or not, that to do those types of things is ethical? Yeah, maybe I'm just an ethical person. And 2, how do you think you're not going to get caught? Like, what's the meme? Nobody's going to know. They're never going to know. Yeah, no, they're going to know. Like,
there's logs.
Yep.
I mean, there's some things. There's some not all this you can do, but like, for example, there are backup services for a lot of the online services that many people don't take. Like, how many people really have a backup to their Microsoft 365 account for their enterprise?
Yeah.
Right. Or better still, how many have tried to restore said backup?
That's the big one. Yeah, lots of people have a backup.
Hard one.
Lots of people have backups. Do they know if any of them work? No, don't. That's a great question.
Well, I've done enough restores of various technology to discover that, oh crap, I don't have a key element.
Yeah.
And that, get out your tap shoes because you're going to be performing.
Yep. And Lee, I would definitely argue that they neglected to disable his access or to change some of the access that he had, because right in your first paragraph there, he was found guilty of causing various technical damages to SCSD systems between May 2023 and January 2025. Like a year and a half, he caused disruption.
Gee, how could he have done that without with no access?
Yeah,
I've harped on slam the door shut when people leave, whether it's for good reason or bad. And I mean, I had a friend when they were laid off, their accounts and access were shut down while they were on the phone with HR laying them off.
Yep.
I mean, they saw it happen on their laptop. Okay. I mean, that seems a little cold. This is a long-term employee, but still effective.
Yes.
The right thing was done. We can argue their mechanisms, good, bad, or otherwise, but they did what was supposed to be done, and they did it in an expeditious fashion. I got to give them points for that.
I would give any organization that I was working with when I was on the phone with the HR to be either laid off and hopefully never fired, because, well, I like to think I'm a better person than that. But you're getting laid off, or giving my notice and them saying I'm going to work for, arguably a competitor, and they're just going to give me the 2 weeks. Like, I would applaud the fact that I was on the phone with HR and my access started going away.
Right.
To the point of maybe even disabling my Zoom account that I'm on with HR too.
Not necessarily. Well, as long as it doesn't disconnect the call.
Yeah, which it might.
You got to finish that out. But so yeah, and so that was kind of a weird one. But like I said, when I started reading the services the guy screwed with, I'm like, oh, I would have been so mad because I managed that stuff. We all have.
Yeah,
boy. And yeah, what backup? Anyway.
Yeah.
It's on tape. It's fine.
Totally.
Because, well, yeah, but and there was another one I had. when I was reading about the basically the environmental requirements for data centers fading out and not being renewed, this is it's tied. It's got the sustainable energy in there, which is not a Trump thing. So I figure he's not going to be inclined to renew that particular clause. Frankly, having a data center running on something that it is environmentally dependent, like solar, is tricky. You can't do it by itself. You have to have other mechanisms. And I remembered all the controls in 853 around data centers, but there's none that says you have to use, sustainable or other type, clean energy or any of that. But they're talking about the critical things. Do you have fire suppression? Do you have, all the life safety things, all those things that are really important. Then I started getting flashbacks to all the work you've been hearing about people in this country blocking AI data centers.
Yeah.
And the reason I was thinking, I ran across this quote to the effect of, if we keep shutting down the data centers, it's going to move to our adversaries, like China, who will be happy to build them without any such constraints or caveats and take our advantage. Now, the question I have for you is, and this is a political figure said this, how many of you have any idea who said that?
Mm-hmm.
It was Newt Gingrich.
Really?
I didn't even know he was still plugged in on this stuff.
I didn't even know he was still alive.
I know, yeah, still alive.
Yeah, I'm like, that was remarkably brilliant for him.
I was going to
By
say,
the way, I
Ralph
do agree.
Nader,
If we
I
say
wouldn't have been
no
that
too
far
much,
off.
it'll go outside the country.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean we can't do it right. But if you shut it down completely, which it'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, that whole prison, not in my neighborhood, not in my backyard. There are very much places that your backyard is perfectly suitable and will happily take that prison.
Right. And by the way, data centers, water consumption really isn't the problem. It's power.
Yeah.
But
Dave,
they go ahead.
Yeah, Dave, you're going to say something there.
No, I just mostly wanted to make the new point because I thought, that was really cool. And I am worried about, losing the capabilities to our adversaries. Not that we shouldn't do it right, that we got to it's a balance, right? Everything's a balance. We're in cybersecurity. We know about balance.
Yeah. And I'm a generally in concept a data center fan. The issue is when it starts to impact the lives of people around said data center.
Yeah, of course.
And part of the issue, to your point, is power. And one of the things we really haven't done well, in my opinion, is invested in multiple different power sources.
Zero Trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. ThreatLocker enforces default deny at execution in a way that remains enterprise-ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold, trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's Zero Trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker.
It's just we haven't invested in multiple different power generation methodologies, which would improve our viability and sustainability from a security perspective. Not just even if you care nothing about the planet and don't believe any of that, it takes a lot of energy, expertise, time, resources to create oil and convert that into electricity. You can't just pump oil into a data center. It has to be converted into a different form of energy. And so what if you have that? You've got solar, you've got battery backup, you've got wind, all of the above as part of your reinforcement of stability for the said data center, and you're reducing your likelihood of impacting the surrounding town, city, etc. negatively.
You left off one pretty clean power source these days.
Nuclear?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's a big topic in my town. We have a nuclear power plant that we recently shut down. And the argument is, hey, we've got these really nice electrical lines that were built as a dedicated backhaul for this power. Well, not a backhaul, a dedicated transport system for the energy the old power generation plant produced. And basically they're saying, well, we've got the lines. Why don't we put a modular reactor there and plug it in, plug the data center into those lines and create the opportunity?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a terrible idea, assuming
No.
that water is not impacted significantly.
Right. Which
So-
it's arguably that the water on a modern data center is arguably not as much of the problem as you think it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
it's not water. Yeah, it's a closed system.
Yeah. But I mean, we're talking. We had some a sidebar conversation with Adrian Sanabria, who hosts one of the other shows here on the network. That yeah, I mean, most of them are closed systems, but there are some component that is not, and even still, the consumption is an impact is very, very minimal, if almost negligible. But I think about this from the other perspective, Dave. When you start impacting the community and those types of things, there's a someone that is near and dear to many of our hearts here in this show. That we've heard rumors that they may have been involved back in the day about bringing a formerly decommissioned coal-fired power plant back online to be able to support Bitcoin mining. Like, they literally put containers. My understanding is they literally were putting containers full of Bitcoin miners at the power plant because they needed power, and then they restarted the plant to feed it. Yeah. They restarted a coal-fired power plant.
Wow.
Well, wasn't there something like Microsoft bought 3 Mile Island to have power for?
I heard that headline somewhere in the last year,
Yeah,
and
I
then
mean,
never heard anything more
What
about
Dave
it.
said would be better. A modern plant would be cheaper and easier and much cleaner to set up.
And not contaminated.
And by the way, I did agree, Dave, with your multi-pronged approach. You're at the energy version of defense in depth.
Yeah.
By the way. I don't disagree with you there, but I just said you left one out.
Yeah, no, that's
and
fair.
oh, by the way, near the metadata center going out that's being put up in my area, which is in the middle of nowhere. By the way, its main neighbors are prisons. They are putting apparently a multi-acre solar farm in as well to offset their power needs.
There goes the neighborhood.
Well, fortunately, the jackrabbits and the coyotes have not filed a complaint yet. And it is high desert. That is this. We're not talking. I mean, the primary owner of the land in that area is the Bureau of Land Management. So lucky on that one. But like I said, they put it away from where it will impact people. Right?
Yeah.
They're trying to minimize the impact. We can't get to zero, but and apparently they're doing the tent data center thing. I had a guy stop by a range day event we had, and he was telling me about that. It's kind of like really weird. He said the wind makes it really rough putting up the material.
It's gonna fly away.
Well, that's one of the downsides of that area is we get some pretty good winds through there, 40, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour.
The data center turns into a sail.
Yeah. But like I said,
you
not
just harvest
super
that
desirable for live. I mean, this is not somewhere you want to build your house, right?
Probably not.
And so, but I don't think all the choices are like that. They're putting them in closer to desirable places, which that's not so cool.
Not in my backyard.
Moving on.
Before we talked about the tent, the one episode before we talked about the tent, I remember, and this is referring to, I believe it's, Lee, or story number 6, Maine disabling their data breach submission portal. Couple shows ago, we had a discussion about reporting, basically threat actors weaponizing reporting structures for bug bounties.
Yeah.
And I hadn't considered the aspect of the fact that there are states who require reporting and they have their own submission system. And they're basically DDoSing this, which it's not just about the DDoS that's a risk, right? Now you're plugging up the ability for private organizations who are regulated and required to report cybersecurity breaches. But if you're also flooding it with fake data, if any of that gets reported secondarily, you're potentially impacting those businesses that you're faking a breach into. Where, like, I can imagine a state employee would be like, oh, hey, Acme company, so about that breach. And they go, wait, this is the first I'm hearing about this. What happened? Oh, you submitted a report. oh no. And
Wait, what?
then, yeah, that's not a CISO.
So-
That's not a call a CISO wants to get.
No.
So the actually, I was going somewhere similar. I thought of AI Slop when I read this, and I thought, back when we were doing things online, all of a sudden we had all these bots and things trying to fill out forms, so we had to do reCAPTCHA or the human verification. We need obviously the 2026 equivalent for both this use case and for AI Slop. And I don't know if AI can detect AI. I don't know if that's a thing, but my point is we got to raise the bar. I mean, my heart goes out to the
That's
Maine.
a Planet
really
of the Apes sacred law. AI shall not kill AI.
There we go.
No.
Is that the 0th law? No. But you're absolutely right. I mean, we got to get better at automatically pulling this crap out or preventing it from getting in the first place. Because our folks that are responsible for reading, whether it's a VDP report, form submitted online, or just maybe just reading your email, we're gonna have to help them out because it's not going to get better.
But it will get more complicated. So
I
agree. We need stronger controls. The problem is the average user is just going to see this as an obstacle. It's going to reduce their ability to use standard tools or services that they use. And or they're going to find ways around it potentially. We're putting the onus. We tend to reflexively, it seems, put the onus back on the human user who's paying for the service. With those kinds of things, and I don't know. We need something better. I don't know what that better is.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's better. I didn't mean to say put the onus back on the submitter. I mean, I expect there'll be some human challenge will increase, but I think the majority of the work has to be electronic on the back end.
Yeah. Like
something that can learn, and change.
My dad has started to encounter CAPTCHA, and he's 80. So he started to encounter CAPTCHA more often in his daily life on his phone. And my reflexive action is to build an AI agent that just consumes CAPTCHAs and spits out like positive result for him. And I'm not the only person who's going to think about that. That's not a hard thing to do.
No.
Yeah, no, that's that whole meme joke of somebody clicking on the "I am not a robot," but it's an actual robot with a pen clicking on it, right?
Yep.
That's. But like I said, I'm trying to say we're all saying the bar has to go up. We have to, and I'm thinking leverage technologies. It's leverage technology. I mean, what the hell? Help the humans.
Yep.
So they can human.
Yeah, I was thinking about this today, that like we're seeing such an increase in AI assisted attack, exploit development, you name it. But we really need to step up AI assisted prevention, detection, any of those types of things. And I thought about it and I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't go to RSA this past year, but it seemed like every booth that I heard about, if you didn't have AI agentic or LLM in the name of your new product or on your marketing materials, you were doing something wrong. And so where is all of that promise of all of that AI to do all those defenses now?
Okay, so you opened the AI door, Larry.
I did.
And where I wanted to go is sort of related to your question. And as backdrop, bore you with a short story. A couple weeks ago, I was at the inaugural SaltCon conference.
I'm kidding.
Spelled NACLCon, NACLCon.
Knackle.
The closing keynote was Chris Weishopel, and he was, basically telling the story of the loft, and I'd never heard a first-person account of the whole thing, and mostly talking about their adventure to DC. 1998 is when they testified before Congress, and so on and so forth.
when they wanted to go buy NSA, and they took the wrong turn, and the van that looked like a porcupine.
I think we did
heard that before.
We
touched briefly on that. Yeah.
Briefly. Yeah. Well, he had a slide towards the end of his slide deck, and I don't know. I've never tried to share my screen on Riverside, but there's not much to it. The title is "The Incentives Haven't Changed." He has 1998, shipped now, patched later, no liability. And then 2026 is ship with AI faster, patched later, no liability.
Yeah.
And I was intrigued by this slide in particular because at our RVASec last week, I was giving a talk on the state of information security today. And the heart of this talk is a slide deck from 1998 that I used to use when I was talking to companies about, if you're going to plug into the internet, you really need to start thinking about information and data security. But it got me thinking, the consensus from most of us that have been around for a while in our industry, in our business, is that we're not doing things very well. We've talked how many times over the years about, the basics and the fundamentals aren't followed. We're, we drink because you don't change your default password, so on and so forth. And most of us are familiar with the old idiom that the definition of insanity is to try doing the same thing, expecting a different result.
Mm-hmm.
Does doing something the same, but with AI, expecting a different result, change that idiom? Is that not also a definition of insanity?
I think I would add something to that. Doing something the same way, expecting the same result with AI, is almost dangerous because you may not, and you may not know it. You may get a result that looks, feels, smells, walks like the thing you're expecting, but it's got malware chock full inside of it. And
wow.
Or it's creating its own skills and tools, etc. Open.
You're making it sound worse than insanity.
I'm not sure what that is. I'm sure there's a word for it. But it's I don't know. There's the potential for thinking that you're doing the same thing, but with AI being far more dangerous, or at the very least, the AI is lying to you, saying it's doing the thing that it should be, and it's really not. It's doing the equivalent of what like some of us did in high school, which is, I totally did the work. Here's all the things. Here you go. It's done. AI has the massive potential to do a whole lot of things better, but it also has a massive potential to do things way worse.
Is there a way, this is my other sort of philosophical question, is there a way to ask AI for a better way to do what we call cybersecurity?
I do with some frequency. So I've got a multifaceted skill where
what are the appropriate pronouns for your agentic AI? Does he, she, or it? What does he, she, or it tell you?
I call mine Janet. If you've
that doesn't answer my pronoun question.
I believe it's a she. Okay. If you've ever seen The Good Place, you'll
Can you ask her real quick what her pronouns are?
I have been making assumptions. I have not asked. I guess that's unfair.
Hello, we're living in 2026.
They.
I will interject real quick. I was talking with a SANS instructor, and I won't give too much of it away, but he's done some courseware on AI about securing AI, and there's a challenge coin that they want to do, and it is a human boxing glove punching a robot, and it was brought to his attention that might be slightly offensive. And he's like, what do you mean it might be offensive? Well, it might be offensive to the AI because they're being hurt.
Okay,
Dave, go on. I'm like, yeah, we'll just leave. I'm just
no. I'm
drop
going
that
to
right
agree.
there.
Which is why my question about the pronouns becomes ironically more important.
I'm going to agree with that person. There's a distinct possibility, those of us who have read science fiction novels, that AI takes over the planet, and if and when they do, and let's assume we have no control over it, and all the cybersecurity professionals who know what they're doing, basically us, are gone, or we're busy, on an island, retiring, going to tour camp.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
the AI takes over, and I tell my kids, like, hey, if robots ever take over, you want them to remember that you were nice to them at the very least. So I don't know. That's the principle I operate. It is a science fiction mythological concern, but as we've learned recently, fiction can become reality with a little bit of code or vibing.
Mhm.
My one
Yep.
AI talk that I've given has been all about the science fiction of AI, and I had in deference to Lintile and Hacker Jeopardy, I had a game built into my talk where I'd put up a picture of a robot or a machine or computer, and you had to name what the object was, the system was, what movie or book or whatever it's from, and was it good, evil, or insane?
Oh,
That's a fun game.
A very fun game.
nice.
Like take Hal, for example, from 2001. Good,
Mhm.
evil, or insane?
Insane.
Yeah. He was giving fundamentally conflicted orders.
He was also singing out of tune, and his vocal patterns were unpredictable, which is for people who do voiceover work or voice acting work. When you create a character who is supposed to be insane, conflicting vocal patterns or irregular vocal patterns is a common way to do that.
Nice. Nice.
All right,
speak
so that's
speak
the
is
consensus.
yeah.
Insane.
So speak of the devil. If you look at the opening scene of the original Terminator movie, when you have you see the wasteland and one of the Terminators steps on one of the skulls.
Yeah.
It is titled Los Angeles 2029 AD.
We're almost there.
Mhm.
We're almost
3
there.
years.
Wow.
Yep. They didn't specify the time of year, but we're somewhere around 3 years away.
Mhm.
It's like, I mean, we didn't call it memes in the 80s, but there was what's effectively a meme that floated around NSA that said 1984, we're behind schedule.
Mm.
Oh,
Well, if you watch some of the later Terminator movies, they keep shifting the timeline for
Wow.
when that happens.
Well, they have to be right at some point.
Yeah.
They're just
Well,
gonna
the
keep
things that have
adding.
happened have moved the timeline but haven't canceled the events.
That's true,
Yeah.
because that's another slide I have in my talks is the date and time that Skynet became self-aware.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I thought it was 37, but maybe I'm wrong.
I mean,
If I had any of my slides loaded on my new laptop, I'd look them up, but I don't.
So you won't.
So I won't.
I would argue that we're at self-aware viruses now with the advent of AI, or at least close to it.
Yep. Jeff, 2:14 a.m. Eastern Time on August 29th, 1997.
Of 1997. Okay.
Yeah, 97.
I remember it was a Wednesday.
A day like any other day.
Mm.
Ooh.
Yep.
So-
The AI learned at an exponential rate, triggering a panic among humans who attempted to shut it down. In response, Skynet deemed humanity a threat and launched a nuclear attack, initiating Judgment Day.
So there's two stories we want to talk about. And I'm not sure which order.
I definitely have one, another little one that I want to talk about that was good.
Okay. What's your little
Lee,
one?
then Larry, then Lee.
Mhm. Oh, okay. We could do it that way too. Whatever.
Yeah, do it.
So I wanted to talk about the FBI cyber range.
Yeah.
Mm.
This town was made for hacking, and that's
Yeah.
just what they'll do.
What it'll do.
A
I
topic
mean,
of
so-
discussion where I was today. So. Go.
Yeah. So the FBI built with an OT Kinetic cyber range that has, I think it's in a big ass warehouse. And
Big ass
it has-
warehouse.
It has both, it has, it includes people that are living in the environment as well as defenders and attackers. It has a data center that's actually dark, cold, and miserable that some of the exercises require.
And cramped.
And cramped, require the people to be actually inside it. And
How did they find so many Windows XP boxes?
I mean, it's OT, so yeah, it's easy.
It's okay.
I mean, they
There's
just
no
got them
problem.
out of ATMs.
Fair enough.
And there's even some interesting. I mean, one of the throwaway lines, it doesn't in the articles, is that in one of the sequences, the students go through a connected house, and they have to, in the guise of collecting evidence, and decide what devices they have to take and what devices they leave behind because they're not going to be helpful.
Interesting.
This is really cool.
And the data center has something like 200 servers running in it with a combination of Windows and Linux. And it's just kind of cool. And this is giving me wonderful flashbacks of Sans Cyber City, and I think it gave Larry flashbacks of other events.
Yep. Yeah. So Sans Cyber City was put together by Ed Scotus's company, who used CounterHack, who also used to do a lot of the cyber ranges for all the Sans CTFs and courses and Net Wars and all that stuff. But after they had built Cyber City, they were contacted by, and I don't remember which branch of the military, to help them build out similar capabilities of Cyber City. But instead of a model train set, it was in fact an actual town that they helped build in all these same capabilities for what was appropriate at the time into the town for them to be able to hack these, and I'm going to use a term for that they would, these cyber assets to help move their mission, down the road, as it were, whether that be IT, OT, you name it. And I remember Ed saying one of the systems that they had in there was absolutely fascinating. That I have some ideas as to who it might have been developed by, but they basically had smell-o-vision. They had these smell dispensers throughout the town that could be remotely controlled based on any given scenario for these locations, including the smell of rotting corpses.
Wow.
So you really could release this blue smoke.
So they just had the Harry Potter Jelly Belly collection.
Yes. Eat this now. Your inject is to eat this jelly bean.
Have any of you guys ever done a cyber range?
Jelly beans, yes.
A cyber range exercise? Have any of you guys ever gone through one?
Define like cyber range, Jeff. Like, in an actual town or one of these types of scenarios, or
I mean, this seems like a little bit blown out. I went to DC a year or so ago. I was invited by somebody from IBM to visit their IBM cyber range that they have there, where they'll bring in groups and put them through a scenario for 4, 6, 8 hours or something like that. And it wasn't as much of this type of detail as it was, everybody's kind of sitting in an auditorium kind of setting. They got lots of big screens, and when you sit down, you've got a placard that says, you're the CEO, you're the CISO, you're the admin, so you're just randomly assigned, and there's a phone on the desk. And I only saw an abbreviated version of it because it was like a mini tour, but just the phone's ringing off the hooks, constantly, and everybody's picking up. And then up on the big screen, it's like somebody playing a reporter, I'm from CNN, and, I just, heard this, and can you confirm this? And just the rapid fire. It was pretty intense. Yep. I imagine this would be a similar but different type of intense to kind of live through this. And admittedly, this sounds very similar to where I was today, which I was at the Technology Advancement Center. It's in Columbia, Maryland, and Defend the Airport was the event. They have a mock-up of a real airport where they've got all the different types of OT systems and sensors and things, and it's like this big model airport, and it's a real airport that's in Hawaii somewhere. So it's a combination civilian and military airport, and you get to, they'll have a bad guy turn all the runway lights off, and you have to figure out how to turn them back on again, and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's similar to this, but maybe on a smaller scale, in miniature.
Yeah, Jeff definitely seen some of those types of things, and arguably in miniature. Like you think about the Cyber Collegiate Defense Competition, CCDC. Like that was arguably, so Paul and I participated in the Mid-Atlantic region, red team and otherwise, and that was really how theirs was run. And I think many other regions were done very similarly, that you had teams and you had to have a CEO, and then you were getting injects that were certain members of your team that were fulfilling certain roles as part of the business had to perform, one, to keep the business running, and two, to deal with threats and attacks in real time. And the phone was ringing off the hook, and they were scrambling to do all this type of stuff at the same time. So Yep.
I feel like
Absolutely.
we interviewed somebody a couple years ago that was talking about a cyber range, and we were trying to figure out a way to hit the road and broadcast from it. So that would have been prior to the corporate acquisition. You remember that, Larry?
I will tell you a PSA. Whatever you do, don't watch the video that's in my article without a drool bib or some other, because you will want to go play there.
What, the Kinetic cyber range article?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm watching it right now. There's
like
puns. I appreciate the puns.
Dave, you're drooling.
A little bit. It's I mean, the street names. So like 1985 DeLorean Street, Commodore 64 Ave. I appreciate that.
And Larry, they have stoplights.
They do.
Yeah,
they also have go lights.
Me too.
I was just trolling Larry there with that one.
Yep. I bet there's actually work though.
The payphone. The payphone seems a little unrealistic, though. We don't have those anymore.
No.
Although I do have to say, earlier, I think it was Lee. You said the phrase "big ass warehouse," and I immediately thought to myself, "That's an unfair beauty standard for warehouses that we're applying now."
I should have said ginormous. 22,000 square feet.
I'm gonna guess
pretty good size.
Lee's other story might be the Mythos Fable.
Well, actually, no, we have a Larry story in the middle.
Well, I was going to say, I'm guessing that's your second story, so let's do Larry's story, because we should probably spend a little time on that.
Yeah.
Well, it depends which one you want to go with, bud. So
this is the one that I would talk about, which was actually kind of we tied this back a little bit to some of the stuff we were talking about earlier with the Novo Nordisk. Was my story number 8, the smart bulb Wi-Fi server hosts banned literature. And there's a little bit of a stretch, but we talked about what Novo Nordisk had their data exposed, and some of that was the AI models. What are they using those AI models for? And we talked about those guardrails of thou shalt not do this, and that kind of reminded me of that there are places on the planet, in the U.S. that have a list of banned books, and that they, the government or governments, local, state, federal, do not want you to have access to certain pieces of literature. So, and I'll get there, I promise. So this gentleman found that there was some smart light bulbs that, to connect them to your home control system, these bulbs were based on an ESP32. ESP32 has Wi-Fi in it, can host web servers, has 4 megs of flash on it. And effectively what he did was he took the open source Tasmota firmware, customized it so that the Tasmota firmware would still have it act as a light bulb, reprogrammed the device, and then added a web server that, when you accessed a specific URL, hosted a whole bunch of banned books.
That's so cool.
That is, I like it.
How many engineers does it take to change a web server, though?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
exactly.
And that is really cool. Although at the beginning they were talking about who'd be putting computers inside a light bulb so they can control it from the computer instead of just walking over to the switch. See, that sounds like a story we heard in your kitchen, Larry.
Yep.
No, but it's from the right perspective. I mean, it's freaking hilarious. But I love it that this guy took the ESP32, added a web server, added a little bit of storage. He couldn't fit the SD card interface in there, but he got the other stuff, and it still works as a light bulb.
Yep,
of course. It's cool. A computer's a computer. And by the way, the banned books aren't beyond having the banned books themselves. It also has the reason why they're banned for each book.
Right.
So he
go
did some
ahead.
research.
Go ahead, Lee.
Research happened. I was just going, this is cool. He doesn't just have the forbidden fruit, but why is it forbidden? And what's the deal? Because, you hear something's forbidden, you don't always have the why.
Yep. So I thought about this, and this, let's provide a list of banned books. And well, all right, banned books here. Now that's the thing, and we can create some light bulbs and some Wi-Fi access points that people can connect to get this stuff. But I was reminded back to a number of years ago. I was introduced to a project called Thumb Drives for Freedom. And Dave, do you remember this one?
It sounds really familiar. If I haven't heard of this one specifically, I've heard of another similar project.
So their deal was that they were collecting thumb drives. And again, at the time, they were a little bit more expensive. They're real cheap now. They were collecting any thumb drives that people were willing to donate, and they basically had this giant board with USB plugs on it. And their thing that they did was they took some art of Kim Jong-un and replaced his mouth with the USB port. So you could plug your thumb drive into this big board into Kim Jong-un's mouth, and they would populate these thumb drives with Western media. And then they would find ways to smuggle these thumb drives across the border into North Korea, so that these North Koreans could see all this Western media that was banned, and they could learn about democracy, and they could learn about freedom, and more importantly, they could watch soap operas and those types of things, and to send potentially hacked firmware for the state-sponsored DVD player. So the state-sponsored DVD player that everybody had in their homes could play, Fearless Leaders DVDs, but also had a USB port that could be used for playing media. And that's why the thumb drives was that they could put the media on these thumb drives, and people could plug them into their DVD player and watch them on something that they had right at home. And
very smart.
And the act of smuggling these drives into North Korea was pretty crazy. They were throwing them over fences in the wilderness, and they were using drones, and the drones were getting shot down, and people were smuggling them in or on their person. But I thought about how many devices are potentially going into North Korea, like a Wi-Fi enabled light bulb with an ESP32, that we could interrupt the supply chain and turn those into devices that they're not, light bulbs for freedom instead of, USB thumb drives for freedom.
Interesting. Yeah,
computers in unexpected places is a concept that keeps popping up for me. I was digging through a drawer yesterday, I was looking for something else, and I found a badge I think it was the badge from ThoughtCon. And I pull it out and I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. I'm just finding random badges I don't know I have. And then I thought to myself, I was like, wait, this is an entire computer just in my hand that I forgot I had. And it was so small that it was easy enough to misplace. I've got another drawer of I don't know, there's probably about 10 more computers sitting next to me. I mean, yeah, they're SP32 or something similar, but the fact that there are computers in places we don't know exist, to me, it just represents a lot of opportunity for creativity.
Yep. And Dave, I think maybe we know that they exist, but maybe we just we've so marginalized that they are there that we don't even think about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I just hope there's some teenager out there who is thinking about it, so that we get to retire at some point.
And I wonder if in the world of espionage, this thing has already been thought of and exploited. And
probably.
So I'm not going to say anything else about that either.
Well, the funny thing is, they mentioned beyond the media server, they actually mentioned, that they have a light bulb that they've hacked to run both. One to run Minecraft and one to run Doom. So if you really want the light bulb that plays Doom, you've got it. But if you want something else, here's Minecraft. just because. Yeah, it's
Does
kind of
your
fun.
badge have the Telnet daemon installed on it? That's what I want to know.
Ooh, talk about a ghost in the system.
Uh-huh.
What runs? So some of the lithium battery like the built-in charging circuits.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody know if they figured out how to run Doom? Like, are those smart enough now where you could run Doom on them or something like that?
You got to figure, like, there may or may not be a very beige box behind me that has some batteries in it that has a BMS that is connected. And it has Bluetooth, which is like, and if I remember correctly, it might have even had Wi-Fi, but it has Bluetooth, which would be like one of the stars of the ESP32 of its core functionality. So, yeah.
Oh man, I figured
Yes?
you or James LV were up to something.
I mean, maybe.
You don't have to admit to anything.
Hey,
Maybe.
speaking of Wi-Fi, Larry, ask me
Yeah.
your question again.
Oh, yeah. The question. So is WPA2 pre-shared key still suitable for Wi-Fi applications and PCI? Because I know we got rid of WEP, but is that a suitable application still?
So I found the applicable requirement, which I swear I haven't had to follow it for a lot of years because most of my clients, if not all of my clients, don't use wireless in their payment processing. So
Yep.
this would be usually marked not applicable because it's not wireless is not involved. But the requirement is for any wireless environment, you gotta not use default wireless encryption keys. You must you must change the default wireless encryption keys. You must change the passwords in all your wireless access points. You must change the SNMP defaults and any other security related wireless vendor defaults. And then a subcategory specifically says default passwords, passphrases on wireless access points are not used. So what you were describing earlier in using the SSID essentially as a seed to a default.
Yep.
I think a good QSA would flag that and say that's a no-no.
Yep. But what was the last bit that you said, Jeff?
Default passwords, passphrases on wireless access points are not used. So most of the requirement is change all the defaults.
Yep. So just change the defaults. Okay.
And
so
turn off WPS probably. Like that's close enough.
I don't think that detail's in here. There's probably a generic statement somewhere about using secure cryptography.
I'd argue that by default, WPS comes with a default key printed on the device, but it's only in commercial. It's only in consumer grade equipment. It's not in enterprise stuff. Mm-hmm. But still, temporarily permanent, permanently temporary. You know how all that stuff gets there.
Yep.
So. But yeah, default, and most of them can be changed now. But yeah, Dave, I just ixnay on the WPSA.
Yeah. So Jeff was right. I actually had two stories in mind thinking of Mr. Paul. The one I've alluded to before was our Arch story that Larry, you and I both have, and the other one, which I think you may have mentioned in passing, was the Fable Mythos story.
Yeah, I mean we've got almost 15 minutes left. I think we can probably cover both. And we did kind of promise we've got some news for Paul because he uses Arch, by the way.
Does he?
We'll save that for last. So.
He does. So
somebody spin a fable about Mythos.
So basically, Anthropic got a stop for Fable 5 and Mythos 5. I think they're both version 5 because they were concerned about its capabilities revealing secrets to foreign nationals, which a lot of companies have on turn. And you can relate to the risks of foreign nationals, Mr. Jeff, and that you have to take controls when they're involved in systems we were familiar with. But in the rest of the world, they're less tightly considered. Anthropic, by the way, is pushing back. Say we have enough guardrails to include the 30-day data retention. I'm trying to remember. I'm vamping because I'm like, where the hell did I put my story?
Number 5. Number 5.
There we go. Thank you. But basically, I expect this isn't going to last very long. Anthropic is making that we got this covered. You're just not considering the risk. I think it's interesting that this came out of Department of Commerce, that they're actually thinking about AI jailbreaking or AI guardrails in their rulings. Kind of a surprise, kind of a good surprise. They're thinking about AI. Right or wrong, I just think it's cool that they are considering it and its capabilities when thinking about restriction.
I was reading something that somebody posted on LinkedIn on this topic, and my first thought was PGP. This has been tried before. Didn't work out too well. And for those not familiar, PGP, an early public open source encryption package. We interviewed Phil Zimmerman, the author, some years ago. He got in all sorts of trouble because encryption, which used to be the purview of where I used to work exclusively for the government, along comes this freeware tool, and I think more for political purposes rather than national security issues, the government tried to poo-poo the export, and of course, how do you limit the export of software? But it was classified as munitions, and therefore it was subject to export controls. And it what I was reading about what the cease and desist or whatever they wrote up to prohibit Anthropic from doing this sounded a whole lot like that attempt to thwart PGP back in the day.
Yeah.
Now, my second thought, and then I'll shut up. This was a topic of conversation today at the event I was at, and I was talking to someone and went way over my head very quickly, but they were talking about, I'll message him to see if I can get the source. He was talking about some mathematical proof that somebody's done that demonstrates that mathematically you can't put guardrails on. I forget whether it was the specific or just AI in general. It was math that was over my head, but I'll try to get the source.
So I said 2 words that Jeff will probably come up with before you other two will, in terms of the foreign national nexus, and that is knowing what a deemed export is. You said export control, but the deemed export is when you've actually exported the data and it's not necessarily appropriate to do it. And that's something, again, I'm not sure everybody thinks about. Those of us that worked in the government space, we think about it. But
I also met somebody today from Idaho National Labs.
Cool.
That did not
You're
know
everywhere. No, no. They've only got 10,000 employees. I mean, what the hell?
I didn't.
Yeah.
But I know a few people out of Idaho now, but not very many. I hope to get to know some more.
So
anyway,
I thought it was a little bit fascinating too that the government is now classifying this as something that needs to be export controlled, and I hear that and I say, this has now become powerful enough that we need to consider to prevent our adversaries from using it, and arguably even foreign nationals. And the thing that they said, and what you had in your some description, Lee, was to prevent access to this for foreign nationals, and even foreign nationals working for Anthropic cannot have access to it.
Right, which is the standard. I think that's the Export Control Playbook 101.
Yep.
There are compensating control options for stuff like that, but you have to go through a process to get there. But yeah.
Yep.
I like the idea that we consider this to be something we don't want our adversaries to get their hands on. Anthropic's probably pissed, but hey, let's not give our adversaries an advantage. I mean, they themselves said the adversaries have similar or better tools, and why give them ours?
Why give them more? But interesting.
Why do we help them? Why help them?
Right.
Now, am I just being mean? Maybe. But anyway, I just thought this was cool. I expect this is going to be worked out, and before the end of the month. I suspect they'll come to terms and have some sort of mitigations, because they're not good. Anthropics wants to get their version 5 of Fable out. Mythos, I think they're making an argument it's a very limited distribution, so there's very low risk if they put out Mythos 5. But Fable, I think they're going to play the defense in depth and other controls and get them to buy off on it.
Yep. Yeah, I think this will probably, Lee, I'm maybe not as optimistic. I think this will probably run on a lot longer, given that, some of the recent political moves against Anthropic and not allowing them to use their models and that type of stuff, government-wise.
Oh.
So,
I thought they reversed that.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right.
Political, not national security.
Exactly. And I say, Lee, I'm not aware of this because it's still something that comes up as we're working for SANS. There are a lot of students that come to SANS courses that work for the government, and they're told that they're not allowed to use Anthropic tools. So we have to tailor any of the AI use in classes to not use Anthropic's tools, even though it happen to be my favorite, and I have great results with them. So, it's, as far as I know, that is still the case.
My recently departed company was all in on AI. We were supposed to figure out how to use AI for, any aspect of our business, and you know the business that I do. But then they also had a policy that we weren't allowed to use any of the AI with client data. Because client data is considered proprietary, confidential, or whatever. So,
yeah. And that's a good starting point. You don't want to stay there.
Yeah.
I'm not there anymore.
Right. He doesn't want to stay there. He didn't.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I fell right into that one.
Yep, you did.
So,
before we talk about Arch, is that where we're going next?
yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to admit I've never really investigated Arch. I'm familiar with Linux, of course, but I've never really understood why Arch was particularly special. So I Googled that, and turns out there's a Reddit discussion from 11 years ago.
Oh no!
It's in the Linux Master Race subreddit from user WaspWRX. Who says, what's so special about Arch Linux? I keep hearing about how amazing Arch is, but why is it amazing? Sure, you can install only what you want.
And Paul responded.
I didn't see him yet.
Okay.
You can just uninstall unnecessary packages from other distros. Why the big deal? And some of these comments are kind of funny. Like this one from Adam Kex says, basically it's for people who can't install Gen 2, which is baloney because one only needs to remember 2 easy commands in order to install it. And then gives those commands.
And they're like 3 lines long.
Yeah. And so basically everybody else is just saying, try it. You'll like it. It's addictive. Arch used to be called the Linux with a nice package manager, etc. But there's Arch fans are significant. Like and this is even over a decade ago. If you like Arch, you really like Arch. Yep. And you have t-shirts that say so.
Yep. Like Paul has a t-shirt that says, it literally has the logo and says, I use Arch, by the way. And like, he brings it up every time. So every time.
How long has Paul been into Arch? Because I don't remember him talking about it 10, 12 years ago.
No, it definitely wasn't 10, 12 years ago.
So he was late to the bandwagon.
It's been 3 or 4 years. I think he switched over when he got a little bit unsatisfied with what the System 76 default distro was, and he tried Arch and has loved it since. But yeah, I mean, and if you use Arch, that's cool. But to Dave, to your comment, Arch users have that feel of like people that do CrossFit. Like, because how do you know they do CrossFit? Because they tell you all about it. So that's arguably the joke about Arch users. I know Paul was Paul. No, it wasn't Paul that was complaining about it. Somebody else that was complaining that they were trying to do updates to Ubuntu, but the Ubuntu package repository servers were under denial of service attacks. so he couldn't do updates, and it was like preventing him from doing his jobs and that type of stuff.
So you want to talk about the package manager problem?
Yeah. So I don't. I don't use Arch, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not as familiar with the package management system, but apparently AUR, which is Arch's community package collection, is separate from the official Arch repositories. The official Arch were not, but the user community was.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a bunch of commands injected into build scripts to download a bunch of rogue stuff.
Right. So the packages themselves are still fine. It's their upload or they're pre-installed scripts that got jacked up.
Yep.
And part of it is people using the system against itself. There are these packages out there, and somebody may abandon one. And Arch allowed for the somebody to say, "Hey, I want to take ownership of that," and so it's out there, it's trusted, it's vetted, right? I get it. I change what the uploader's doing, and the reputation's intact. But guess what? We're doing more stuff.
Yeah.
And there was what was it? 1,000 packages? Or something like that? It was a bunch
1,936.
Oh, I missed it by that much.
Yeah, and that was because I was looking at the article that we had in there from TrueSec, and it said that the list of effective packages can be found here. I clicked on the link, and it's literally just a file, a note with 235,000 views. And like, there's no count. And I'm like, oh, and I keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. I'm like, oh, I'm only on E. So I copied everything, pasted it into VI, did a sort WWC minus L and so forth. And the end result was 1,936.
Woohoo.
Yeah.
I mean, my article says about 1,500, and that is a very large value of 1,500. Yep. So the cool thing, I mean, there's this group I had never heard of, that just means me, it's called WANOS, that published a report on the thing, which was kind of cool. And it has IOCs in it. And there's also a AUR check script out in GitHub that checks this. I was trying to remember who looks for the atomic lock file. By the way, they've called this the Atomic Arch campaign because of a lock file called Atomic Lock. And unfortunately, it doesn't have a sexy logo as yet, but time. And I was trying to remember if like I said, I was wondering where that script was, but I just thought it was nice that somebody published a script already to say, hey, this will go find it. The blog post from WANOS is kind of cool and gives you lots of stuff. It's not as snarky as Watchtower, though. If you're looking for snarky, you'll be disappointed.
Nice. Yeah, I hadn't read the Watchtower one, so interesting.
Well, no, I don't have a Watchtower link in here, but like I said, don't you know, Watchtower is always snarky and fun.
Yeah.
That's half the reason I read those, because they're just fun. Not also because they're good shit. Don't get me wrong. But I'm thinking, I'm wondering if what Paul, I would love to get Paul's take on this.
Yeah. Yeah, surprised. Like we had our call this week, and he was on it, and he didn't mention anything about it.
I think he had a prior commitment he forgot about, and I suspect it has something to do. If I caught it right, I think it's his anniversary today.
It is
20th.
So he would not be with us. He has a definite prior commitment, but true within the I'm a regular husband playbook right there at the top for getting your anniversary. Right? That's not a good thing to do.
No, I know he remembered, and I know he planned something, because he definitely told us to make sure that the show was covered. I had kind of forgotten that I needed to do main host duties tonight until this morning when I saw Paul post about the fact that it was his anniversary. And I'm like, ooh, Paul's not going to be there today. So fortunately, it was early
Paul
enough.
20 years
here,
ago
man.
with hair. It's pretty weird.
Yeah, I didn't have much hair, but it was still hair.
Yeah, it was still there, though.
Yep. And the irony is that we started doing this podcast before they got married.
I was noticing, I was doing the math on that, and I was like, wow, his commitment is more to the podcast than his wife.
Does he remember his Security Weekly anniversary? Does he call you, Larry?
No. I mean, we could probably figure it out, honestly, what the day of the first podcast recording was.
I think we should before episode 1000. Just saying.
Yeah, we're getting up there.
Mm.
I mean, when is 1,000 supposed to? Because we're at what
Yeah, we
episode
tried
is
to
this?
map it out. I mean, we do 48 episodes a year, so we're within 2 years.
We should have a party.
Larry's asking Claude right now.
Actually, I'm just asking Google.
Oh.
Claude, what kind of party should we have?
I remember 500.
Where should we have it?
Paul's house.
It's a better question.
Answer.
Yeah.
Done.
It's not big enough.
Let's see. So I don't know if I know the exact date, but it was somewhere between September 10th and 16th, 2005.
Wow.
Because we recorded it in the bar at the rotating restaurant at the top of the hotel in LA. Because that was the conference that they held in LA because they needed to move it last minute because it was supposed to be in New Orleans, and New Orleans had been wiped out by Katrina.
Oh, wow.
That's a good reason to move your conference.
Yep. Yep. So it was somewhere between September 10th and 16th, and I don't believe it was the first night. It may have been the second or third night right in there.
If only we had an archive of all the old episodes. Somewhere.
Yeah, it's probably still wouldn't tell us what date we actually recorded it on, because episode 2 was very shortly thereafter. I think it was the next day, and that was the famous
so
episode.
you started out Security Daily.
Well, it just happened. So it was very timely. We did the first one. We got done recording. We went to the bar. We sat down. And as we're talking, the woman behind us overheard us and said, "Oh, you guys do a podcast? Is it about computer security?" Yeah. We just started. We just recorded our first episode. "Oh, my boss loves podcasts. I bet I could totally get him to come on the show. He's actually going to be in town tomorrow. I'll reach out to him if you want to do an interview." And we said, "Who's your boss?" And she said, "Marty Resch."
Oh.
Yeah,
That's
founder of SourceFire, right? Later sold to Cisco. So episode number 2 was
Didn't
an
you
interview
mean sold
with
out to Cisco there?
I don't throw stones. Don't throw stones. But episode 2 was an interview with Marty Resch. And Josh Wright was kind enough, because we didn't have anything ready to record, Josh Wright was kind enough to offer up his suite that he had at the hotel for us to go and record in.
Dude,
That's amazing.
Yeah. And we had really bad equipment at the time. And the sound guy, about 10 minutes into the interview, ended up taking off his headphones. And, we were all like, what are you doing? And at the end of the episode, after all was said and done, Marty left. Paul asked, "Andy, why'd you take your headphones off during the recording?" He says, "Oh, air conditioner was too loud. I couldn't hear anything."
That's terrible. That's rough.
Oh, no.
And he didn't
No,
compensate.
that's not the outcome. Oh, my God.
So that's why episode 2 was delayed back in the day by so long, because Paul spent 2 weeks trying every trick in the book to try to clean up that audio, and it got to a point where it was diminishing returns, and it was like, okay, we just got to release it how it is. Oops, hey, we're new at this. Then again, so was everybody else on the planet.
Right.
So
yeah.
This is one of the first podcasts ever, which is kind of cool. All right, so episode 1000, let's plan that party now. We have to have a piñata, obviously, because there's going to be cybersecurity professionals there. That That goes with pinatas. What should it be shaped like? Answer, Commodore 64. That was easy. Challenge coins, of course. And I can bring the booze. I basically already own all of it. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yes.
I would say, I was thinking it had to be an Apple II with like the Oregon Trail on the screen.
You're right.
Is there like an Elks Club in Warwick anywhere, or
Oh, I'm sure.
some large venue we could rent out? Because we should
You
throw
know,
a party.
Yeah, and it really just getting everybody together is going to be the huge win.
Yep.
The details,
You
they'll
know,
fall into place.
honestly, we should probably do it at a security conference and have everybody at the conference be able to come. Just have to find one that's appropriately timed. So even if we miss it by an episode or two, like, it's okay. It's the spirit of the thing that really matters. So
Yes.
So speaking of the spirit of the thing that really matters, we're over time.
Yeah.
Well spent.
So
But it's been a spirited conversation.
it has. And see, you guys were worried we weren't going to have enough stories without Paul's 30 stories for us to cover enough news. But we did it. So, Mr. Jeff, why don't you take us out?
Over and out.